Good morning. Happy Friday. Today is Friday, October 11th, and I am your morning witch. So first off, my first round of spooky season nails by my youngest, so that's fun. Okay, so I hear you guys. You're like, Amber, you're talking about honoring your ancestors, but I don't even know where to begin. So let's talk about that today, because we've talked about like where to begin and looking into the ancestors as a whole, as in where they came from, but what about specific ancestors or specific lines, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, okay, whether it's a specific ancestor or a specific line, we're going to start with looking into that line. So, for instance, you're interested in your mother's mother or your mother's mother's mother. Start with your mother's side of the family. Learn what you can. What are the last names associated? What are the married names associated, right? Because so your last name is Smith, but your mother, her maiden name is not Smith. So what's your mother's maiden name? Okay, so once we found out what our mother's maiden name is, now we want to start looking deeper into things like, okay, do we know our mother's first and last name maiden-wise? Okay, great. Do we know our mother's middle name? I know that seems like a silly question, but every day I learn something new that surprises me, and sometimes it's that people don't know their parents' full names or birthdays. Let's start with what's easy. We're going to start with our parents. We're going to start with our mother if we're looking into our mother's side. We're going to start with our father if we're looking into our father's side. But either way, we've got to have somewhere to start, right? So first and last names are very important. Middle names are incredibly helpful, especially a lot of times like families use the same names over and over again. So, John Edward and Edward Jonathan may not be the same person, although it seems like, oh, it's the same name. Well, no, because they're from the same line, but these are two different individuals. Okay, so we found out our mother's maiden name. Mother was not a Smith, mother was a Brown, and mother's maiden name was something else. And we go back this way as far as we can, just asking family members, right? We're going to start by asking family members because the easiest thing to do is start with what we have accessible to us. So let's ask the people who are related to the people that you want to know about. Maybe they don't have a wealth of information, but if they have a name, if they have a birthplace or a place that they resided in, if they have siblings' names, if they have parents of the grandparent you want to look into. These are all helpful things to be able to do your own research without hitting a paywall. Okay, so we've started the research where we can within our own family line, or within maybe your grandma's best friend or something like that, or your great aunt on your dad's side was actually friends with your great aunt on your mom's side. So this is where we're going to get some information, and we're going to go back and we're going to go back and we're going to continue moving up the line as far as we can with information from people that we know. And then we're going to move on to the internet, because in this day and age, we're blessed enough to have the opportunity to look into these things without having to travel to faraway libraries and things like that. Now, not everything on the internet is accurate, which is why it's very important to find out what we can from the people that we can, and then use the internet to our advantage beyond that. While you're looking up names and birthdays and things like this, you also want to pay attention to the websites that are giving you the information. There's a lot of just directory kind of websites out there. There are a lot of websites that want you to think they're like ancestry.com, and you'll sign up to, pay to see this birth certificate, things like that. I personally won't pay. My rich uncle has a rich wife who does look into our family, but she buys the information and she doesn't share. I don't do that. I am looking into it on my own in free ways, and I have actually found out a family rumor is complete fact, and that ancestor was buddies with Beethoven. So we're going to pay attention to the websites that we get the information off of. Just because it looks like it's a general run-of-the-mill kind of website doesn't mean it has bad information. I found out that my great-great-grandmother was born on the Mongolian border of Russia. And I found that out just I was actually looking into my grandfather himself, but I found his mother his grandmother. One of the two's information. And then my mom happened to say something like, oh yeah, granddad's mom or granddad's grandma, now I can't remember, it had to have been his mom, but anyway, she was born in China. And I was like, oh yeah, I actually found like a piece of her birth certificate that said she was born like at the Mongolian border of Russia, so like it makes sense, right? And that was just on some generic run-of-the-mill website that wanted me to like buy the birth certificates for my ancestors. I didn't have to spend a dime, and I was able to find out valid information about my grandmother, including that her name was Eugenia, but she went by Jenny. Had no idea. No, I'd never heard her called Jenny before. And yes, there will come a point where like there is no verbal, maybe your mother doesn't know much about her family. Maybe your mother doesn't know much about her grandparents' family. Like my mother knew about her parents and a very little bit about her grandparents. She'd actually never even met them. She'd only spoken to them over the phone. But because of the little tidbits of information that I was able to gather from my living family members, I was able to look back multiple generations to anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That whole family rumor thing that turns out to be true, and like my mother's generation has a little bit of paranoia about it, and so I don't want to. They have scared me, and But anyway, like I was able to go back multiple generations to find out information with just a little bit from the here and now. And then there's there's the other line of like, I need to look into my grandfather's line. He was adopted from Poland after World War I. And really all I know is that he was the product of a Jewish Polish woman and a soldier, possibly a French soldier, possibly a Belgian soldier. Not sure. And I haven't looked further back because it is harder, and I am actually going to start that journey because the reason that I use mother's mother as an example is I was low-key obsessed with my mother's mother. She was gone before I was ever born. She was the first individual I ever prayed to, and I still pray to her to this very day. And so it was my mother's side that I was drawn to growing up, and it was my mother's side that I've been drawn to as I've looked into my ancestry, and it is my father's side that is reminding me they exist, and I need to honor them. But these are all places to start. And I mean, like, I'm going to start there with, like, I'm going to look into my grandfather and see if I can find out about his adoption. I don't have the adoption papers. One of my uncles did. And I definitely did not inherit those when he passed. So, I'll have to do this journey with just my grandfather's information. Luckily, he was in the Army, so I have his accurate birth date and date of death, which helps in looking things up because knowing his middle name and his birth date is going to help get me further along with looking into his adoption from Poland, and maybe if I can find out who his mother was, I'll be able to find out where she came from. And like who her parents were and who their parents were. And maybe I'll never be able to pinpoint my grandfather's father. I might never be able to pinpoint it, which means I'm going to choose to think that his father was a Belgian soldier and not a French one, because that means the story is better. If it's a French soldier, then it's not a good story, and it makes me sad. And yeah, and it's okay, like, to find out things that make you sad. Like, it's gonna happen. My great grandmother, Mama Esti, she left Ukraine because of religious persecution. She was a Jewish woman, and back then, still to this day, maybe you're less welcome in places if you're Jewish. And so she came to America looking for a better life. And the man she eventually met had come to America from Ireland looking for a better life. And because she didn't want her children to find the same stigmas in life that she fled, she converted to Catholicism like her Irish husband and raised my grandmother's generation, and then my grandmother raised, my mother and aunts and uncles' generation Catholic. So, I mean, you're going to find things that maybe they're not the best, but knowing is better than not, because we're going to take this a step further to how ancestral worship helps us heal family lines, and that's right in there. Like, it's sad because it's sad, and that's the things that you can heal. I mean, maybe I can't heal my family fleeing religious persecution or fleeing death by potato, but you know, I can heal other aspects of those sad things. But yeah, this was based on somebody talking about, you know, not knowing where to start. So I hope you have found this helpful, and I hope you have a fabulous fucking Friday.